This Christmas photograph was taken in 1891. A small parlor. A crooked little fir tree in the corner, its branches hung with paper chains and candles that haven't been lit yet. On the floor, a few wrapped parcels carefully tied with string. For children stand in front of the tree. 2 girls in plain pinafores. 2 boys in hand-me-down jackets with the sleeves a bit too short. Their hair has been combed, their boots polished. It should look like any other Victorian Christmas morning. Behind them, in 2 upholstered chairs, sit their parents. The father wears his best black coat and waistcoat. His hands rest on his thighs. The mother is in a dark dress with a brooch at the throat, a shawl folded neatly around her shoulders. At first glance, it's a poor family's version of what we'd all recognize as a Christmas card photo. Everyone squeezed into the frame, trying to look solemn for the camera. But look at the children's faces. The eldest girl's eyes are swollen from crying. The youngest boy is gripping the edge of his sister's dress so hard his knuckles are white. None of them are looking quite at the lens, they're looking just to the side at something, or someone. And look at the parents. The father's head is tilted at an odd angle, as if it's been carefully placed there and might roll if you touch it. The mother's hands are not resting on her lap so much as positioned, the fingers too straight, the knuckles too slack. There's a strange flatness around their mouths, as if the lines have been penciled in. When this photograph was first pulled from a shoebox in a house clearance almost a century later, the dealer who bought it thought it was simply another stiff Victorian family portrait. Only when a local historian read the faint pencil note on the back, Christmas Day 1891 after the fire, and began to dig into parish records and newspaper files, did the truth surface. By the time the shutter clicked on this Christmas family reunion, both parents had been dead for hours. They had died together on Christmas Eve in a house fire. Their bodies were washed, dressed, and propped in those chairs. And their children insisted on having the Christmas photograph anyway. Welcome to Veins of Darkness. Victorian Christmas looks cozy to us now. Cards with snow-covered churches. Dickens stories about last-minute redemption. Trees twinkling with candles, families gathered round the table, goose or beef on the plates. But under all that tinsel and sentiment was a very hard world. In 1891, in industrial towns across Britain, December didn't smell of cinnamon and cloves. It smelled of coal smoke, wet wool, and drains. Men worked right up to Christmas Eve. Mothers stretched small wages to buy oranges and nuts. Children were lucky if they got a new pair of stockings and a cheap toy. And houses burned. Most working-class families cooked over open grates. They lit rooms with gas or oil lamps. Christmas meant more fires, more candles, more paper decorations hanging just a little too close to a flame. When things went wrong, they went wrong fast. The case behind this photograph comes from a town in Yorkshire, the kind of place with rows of back-to-back brick houses, a mill at one end and a church at the other. In the parish registers the family is real, even if we'll call them by a different name here. In 1891, the Turners lived at 23 Chapel Lane. Thomas Turner, 41, worked as a carter hauling goods for the local mill. His wife, Margaret, 38, took in laundry. They had 4 surviving children. Annie, 13. Lizzie, 11. James, 8. And little William, 5. They weren't poor in the sense of beggars, but they weren't comfortable. They rented their small 2-room house. The front room doubled as parlor and bedroom. The back room as kitchen and wash house. That winter things were tight. The mill had cut hours. Coal was expensive. But the Turners still tried to make Christmas special. Margaret sewed small toys from scrap cloth. Thomas bartered for a little fir tree, the top of a larger one cut in the churchyard. On the morning of December 24, 1891, Annie later told an inquest her father had promised, "We'll have a picture of us all like the folks up street." A family portrait. They had never had one. That afternoon, Margaret decorated the tree with paper chains and cut out stars. She set aside the best plates for the next day. She ironed the children's clothes, ready to be worn in the morning. They would go to church, have their dinner, then visit Mr. Selby's photographic studio on High Street, a cheap place that advertised Christmas groups, families, and children. They went to bed on Christmas Eve with that picture in their minds. Everyone together, for once, captured on a piece of card they could keep. They didn't know that before dawn their house would be full of smoke. The fire starts sometime after midnight. The exact cause is never proved. The inquest will later list probable upset of lamp as the reason. Thomas had come home late from the pub. He may have knocked the lamp as he undressed. Or a coal popped from the grate onto the hearth rug. What matters is that, in those packed little houses, flame needs only a moment. The neighbor in number 25 tells the coroner she woke to a crackling noise and the smell of burning. Looking out into the yard, she sees smoke curling from the Turners' back window. She runs to the door, bangs on it, shouts. Inside, Annie wakes confused. The room is already thick with smoke. She hears her mother shouting her name, hears her father coughing. Someone, she never later remembers who, pulls her from the bed. Hands grab Lizzie, James, William. The children are half dragged, half pushed through the back door into the yard, barefoot on cold stone. Behind them, the parlor is a box of flame. Neighbors form a bucket chain. Someone runs to wake the fire brigade, but by the time the engine clatters into Chapel Lane, the worst is already done. The downstairs room is ruined. The joists above are scorched. The small fir tree, its lower branches blackened, leans askew. When the firemen and the doctor finally force their way inside, they find Thomas and Margaret in the parlor. He is near the fallen lamp. She is by the stair foot, as if she tried to get back up to the children. Both are overcome by smoke. Any burns are secondary. The doctor pronounces them dead at the scene. Outside, in the cold yard lit by flickering lamplight, the 4 Turner children stand wrapped in borrowed blankets, watching their house steam and drip. Somebody leads them next door. Somebody makes tea. Annie refuses to drink it. She keeps saying over and over, "We were going for the picture tomorrow." It's a small detail that survives in a local newspaper report the next week, because the journalist found it pitiful and quotable. In that moment, it is more than just a childish fixation. It is a way of saying, this wasn't how it was supposed to go. We were meant to be together. By dawn on Christmas morning, the bodies of Thomas and Margaret have been carried upstairs to the front bedroom of number 23. The room is smoke-stained but intact. Sheets are hung over the doorway to keep out curious eyes. The children are put to sleep in a neighbor's house. In a more ordinary story, that would be the end of it. Funeral arrangements. Black clothes. The slow, bureaucratic business of finding relatives to take in 4 new orphans. But this is not an ordinary story. Because sometime between sunrise and noon, Annie Turner, 13 years old, barefoot in borrowed stockings, says something that will end up echoing through archive files more than 100 years later. She says, "We're still having the picture." We know she said it because the photographer wrote it down. Mr. Selby, the studio owner, leaves a brief account in his daybook of that odd Christmas call-out. December 25, 1891, Special Commission, Turner Family, Chapel Lane. Note, elder girl insists upon Christmas photograph, with parents, though parents deceased. He has, like many photographers of his era, taken post-mortem portraits before. Babies in christening gowns. Old men laid out on parlor tables. Sometimes a child posed in a chair with a toy. A full family group with dead parents and living children together? That is new. At first he refuses. It is Christmas Day. He has his own family waiting. He tells the neighbor who comes to fetch him that such work is better left alone. But the neighbor, in Selby's account, says something that loosens his resolve. The little lass says if she can't have them all in it, she doesn't want to live here no more. We can read drama into that. We also have to recognize the utterly practical Victorian bluntness about death and orphanhood. Annie knows, on some level, that her life is about to be pulled apart. Siblings separated, sent to different relatives, different streets, maybe different towns. The Turner family as a unit is already gone. She wants proof it existed. So, after dinner, Selby packs up his portable camera, plates, and a collapsible backdrop, and walks through the cold to Chapel Lane. The fire brigade has been and gone. The downstairs is a wreck of blackened plaster and broken furniture. But the front bedroom upstairs is usable. That is where he sets up. He hangs his neutral backdrop over the worst of the smoke stains. He opens the window a crack for light and to cut the smell. He brings in 2 chairs borrowed from a neighbor. The Turners' own have been scorched. Thomas and Margaret have been washed and dressed by women from the street, as was custom. He is in his Sunday suit, hair smoothed back. She is in her best dark dress, shawl pinned. Someone has arranged their hands, folded, in their laps. They are propped in the borrowed chairs. The children are brought in. Annie's eyes are red-rimmed but dry now. Lizzie clutches a small bundle, one of the presents her mother had hidden under the bed, hastily wrapped. James holds a wooden horse with its paint blistered from the fire. William clings to Annie's skirt. Selby, practical, arranges them the way he would for any family group. Parents behind, children in front. Except the parents cannot move themselves. He and a neighbor lift Thomas carefully into place, angle Margaret's head so it doesn't slump. He drapes her shawl to hide the way she's leaning into the chair back. He positions the children. Annie beside her mother, straight as a poker. Lizzie between the chairs, resting her hand on her father's arm, or rather, on the sleeve laid over his arm. James on the other side. William on the floor with his toy. He notices, even as he works, that none of them look at their parents. Their eyes are fixed on him, or on the tree someone has moved into the corner, its singed branches rearranged, the paper chains hastily rehung. On the floor between them, at Annie's insistence, he places the few surviving wrapped bundles. "Put them in, please," she says. "So they know." He doesn't ask who they are. He checks his focus, checks it again. The children are trembling slightly, from cold, from shock, he can't tell. He knows he needs them to be still. "Just a few seconds," he tells them. Think of what you'd like to tell them." He pulls the cap off the lens. The room, for that narrow slice of time, goes perfectly still. Even the smoke smell seems to hold its breath. Then it's over. One exposure. Maybe two if he risks a second plate. He packs up. He goes home. He develops the image that evening by lamplight, watching the ghostly shapes of the Turner family appear in the tray. Later, in his notebook, he writes a line he doesn't usually bother with. "Children all appear to know the parents were dead. Faces most affecting." For years, the print lives in a frame on the mantle of whichever relative takes in the Turner children. Parish records show that Annie and Lizzie go to an aunt in a neighboring town. James and William are sent to an uncle in Leeds. They do not grow up together. But once or twice a year, at Christmas or on the anniversary of the fire, the four of them are brought back to Chapel Lane. They stand on the step of what used to be their house, now repaired and relet, and then they go inside to the aunt's front room where the portrait sits. In 1910, when Annie is in her 30s, she writes on the back of the card in a careful adult hand. "Taken Christmas Day 1891. Mama and Papa had died in the fire the night before. We would not have it put off. We wanted them with us." That note is still there when, in the 1980s, the house is cleared after the last aunt dies. A house clearance man, sorting through drawers, finds a stack of old photos. He glances at the Turner portrait, sees Victorian family, and drops it into a box for auction. Only later, when a collector scans it and happens to flip it over, does he read Annie's words. From that moment on, the photograph stops being anonymous. It circulates among historians of photography as an extreme example of holiday post-mortem practice. It surfaces uncredited on forums about creepy old photos, sometimes stripped of its context, sometimes embellished with invented details. What remains solid is the core. Two parents who meant to have their first Christmas portrait on December 25, 1891. A fire on Christmas Eve that killed them instead. For children who, on Christmas Day, insisted the photograph go ahead anyway. Dead parents, propped carefully in chairs with singed gifts at their feet. Children whose faces show, unmistakably, that they know exactly what they're doing. From our perspective, it's easy to recoil. The idea of children standing inches from their parents' corpses for the sake of a photo feels like horror. It is horror. But it's also something else. It's a snapshot of how people in the 19th century tried to tame horror with ritual and image. They didn't have grief counselors. They didn't have therapy. They had church, neighbors, and, increasingly, the camera. The Turner children knew their lives had been split cleanly into before the fire and after. The photograph, as strange as it seems, was their attempt to carry a piece of before across the line. From a distance, the picture looks like countless others. A family, a tree, a stiff pose, a Christmas they thought would be one of many. Up close, it's something else entirely. A holiday portrait where the holly and paper chains are only stage dressing for the truth that everyone in that room understood. This is not the beginning of a season. This is the end of a family. Thank you for watching this episode of Veins of Darkness. If this story has changed the way you look at old Christmas photographs, if you find yourself wondering next time you see a stiff Victorian group around a tree, who in that frame might already be gone, consider subscribing for more journeys into history's darkest images and the grief they tried to hold. Until the next macabre tale, stay curious about the darkness,